So my name is Christina Pepper, and I am one of the trainers at Parasoft, and I hope everyone can hear me with my current volume. It's my pleasure to be here with you today to share what Parasoft can do for your parishes and how we can help hopefully make your life a little easier at the parish. So I've got an Ask the Expert class later, so if you're interested in just bombarding me with kinds of questions for Family Suite, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have so that we can make it a little bit easier for you to do your jobs. Some of the things that I'm going to be going over is how to print labels and how to do a mail merge and stuff like that, so can be helpful. So I always like to start out my classes with saying good morning, because 3 years ago, well, a while ago I was here, but my last name was Dargis. So if you're like, Christina, I don't know. But then what happened was I got married, and so my last name now is Pepper. And when my husband and I went on our honeymoon, we went on a cruise, and every morning there was this man who would push the cart, and he would bring the juice and stuff, and he would say, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning. And it just set our day off to be in the right way. So it's my pleasure to be here. I'm going to go through my little presentation. I'm going to go live in the system, and that's one of the reasons why I'm going to be over there, is because I like to go live in the system to show you exactly what you're going to be looking at rather than just showing you slides. We do have a slide presentation for you, and that's on the website, so you can go and download that if that's something that you're would like to do, so you don't have to worry about frantically taking notes or taking pictures of the screens. However, if that's what you'd like to do, we're not going to stop you. All right? So when I'm done, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those questions, so please write them down. This is the only one that I'm going to say, don't interrupt me, that I'm not going to take questions as I'm going through. It's more of a presentation than a training, but the rest of the stuff that I presented for you guys or prepared is more of training. So, all right? I'm going to go ahead and get started. So welcome to Parasoft. Okay. So this is going to be a Family Suite overview, and we're going to be talking about why parishes and dioceses choose Family Suite, the modules that are available. I'm going to cover each of the different modules and kind of get a system overview, and it says questions throughout, but I'm going to ask questions to be held towards the end. So I'd like to talk about our accounting module. So our accounting modules have many different aspects to them. We have a ledgers and payables where you can write checks, record checks. You can print your bills. You can add all of your vendors. We have a payroll system. So if you wanted to pay all of your staff through it, you would be able to. We have a ledger report writer. So Parasoft Ledgers and Payables comes with a lot of different reports and a lot of customizable reports that you can kind of make on your own by choosing different filters. But sometimes you need something a little bit more robust, and in that case that would be the ledger report writer that you would use. Okay. Then we have an accounts receivable. We also have a fixed assets program. The fixed assets program is great to keep track of everything that the church has asset-wise. So it's all in one location, and it has many different areas where you can record who has what location it's at, if it's borrowed, where it went, things like that, so you can kind of keep track of those fixed assets. And then the last one we have is a purchase order. Okay. Then we have our census modules. So I'm going to start with offering and pledges up at the top. So we've got offering and pledges, and we just updated our offering module, so I'm not sure how many of you have worked in that updated offering module, but I'll be doing a presentation later on to go through some of the new updates in that offering module. But you can keep track of offering and pledges. You can also now keep track of sustaining gifts. So if your parish uses sustaining gifts, you can now keep track of that with Parasoft Offering. We have Parish Cast, which is a way to send out text messages and video messages, audio messages to your parishioners. We have our ministry scheduler module, which allows you to schedule all of your ministers, keep track of when they're volunteering, schedule their volunteering, print lists. And we have Intelligent Query, which is like our reporting system. So there's a lot of reports that you can get in Parasoft Family Suite, but if there aren't some reports that you need, Intelligent Query lets you mine your data. So basically, many of the data fields that you have in Parasoft Family Suites, you can actually create reporting, and you can do subqueries. So you can say, if this and this, or if this, then not this, things like that. We have our religious education and tuition module. That kind of speaks for itself. It's religious education and tuition. It allows you to register, your parishioners can register their families online, their students online. And then you can also accept tuition through our online program. We also have the religious education where you can actually create a form in our online giving program or another giving program that would allow you to, once the family has registered, it then takes them to the form where they could complete their payment, and that's something that we added in the last year or so. And then online giving, and Nancy spoke earlier about online giving. And then we also have My Own Church. My Own Church allows your parishioners to see the data that you have for them, and it allows them to submit changes to their data. So they can submit address changes, they can add birth dates, they can add many different things, demographic phone numbers, emails, things like that. No one can change your data. Someone at your parish has to go in and has to accept those changes, but it gives the parishioner the opportunity to kind of input some data for you so that way you're not having to read handwriting. Those are for our data savvy parishes. Okay? Everything's integrated. So you can use the family directory with My Own Church, you can use it with any of the modules, and then you can use it with the accounting package also with ledgers and payables. So if you have Parasoft accounting, you can actually, when you close a batch in Parasoft Family Suite, it will create that entry, that deposit entry into Parasoft accounting for you. So that's not something that you have to go back and do. I am going to ask if there's any questions at this point because I don't usually talk this long. Yes, sir.
Are the online giving and texting equal? That's extra fees?
The online giving is fee-based, and the text messaging, yes, it's with a parish cast. You purchase tokens, and then you can send out text messages. What?
Well, you said everything is money.
Yeah, it's nominal. I mean, I'm told that we're like the lowest Parasoft our offering is like the lowest out there in the industry. So it's something worth looking into. Any other questions? Okay, so now I'm going to go into the Family Suite overview. So this may look familiar to some of you guys. And I am going to start with our updated offering module. So I'm going to go to offering. And this is what the updated offering module looks like once it comes in. So we have a card view now. So this is considered a card view. So you have your programs, your different categories, and then you have the items underneath each card is what you would click on to actually view that information. Over on the left-hand side, we have our grid view. So if I click on that, that's going to bring up the same exact cards, but it's going to be just by name. Okay? And then from there, if I go to a different screen, so let me go to my batches screen, I'm going to click on open at the bottom. That's going to open up my batches screen, and right now it looks like I don't have anything. So I'm going to click on the magnifying glass to bring up my batches, and that's going to bring up my open batches because that's where I left it at last. So I'm going to change that down here to any, and then change that to search. So that brings up my batches. So on each of the views, you have a card view and you also have a grid view. So it depends on which one you like, the card view or the grid view. Is that better? I'm sorry? We okay? Okay, so we've got the card view and the grid view. And you can download your reports or export your reports. So in any of the modules, you can export your reports. And to add things in this module, you just simply click on the plus to add, and you click on the little filter to remove or add the filter sections over on the right-hand side. Now we have...
Unfortunately, that light projector shining on the screen, so there's nothing we can do about that.
So what's happening? That's going to make it too big. So I don't know if that helps you see it any better.
You can see better from up here.
Okay, under funds, we now have the ability to use sustaining gifts. So if I go into a fund, okay, over here we have our sustaining gifts area. Just like you could before, you'll still be required to name your fund and put an account number in for your fund. Okay, and then you can mark your fund active or inactive. So marking your fund active or inactive is going to allow someone to post to that fund or for you to import your online giving into that fund. Okay, so one of the questions that I get a lot is, we have a lot of funds in our system that we don't use anymore. Can we delete them? Well, you don't want to delete them because those are all tied to parishioners' gifts. Okay, but you can mark them inactive by clicking on the little check mark. And that way, when you're entering contributions, they don't all show up in that list. Okay, so you can actually narrow down how many contributions, how many different funds someone can look at from the list by checking the fund as active. Something else we now have is where you can add a pledge end date. Okay, you can add a pledge end date. So that way you don't have to create funds year after year after year. You can use the same fund year after year, but create a pledge end date for it. And then we have our little save icon, which is new. This is our refresh, and then this is the delete, which we don't want to do. Kind of go over, this is high level. I'm going to cover more of this in another class. So we're going to go to reports. And we have our year-end statements that were redone. So I'm going to go to my contribution detailed statement report. And that brings up the report itself, the categories. And I can choose, just like before, families, members, families that include member gifts. I can include donors who are using my own church. I can add a signature just like I could before, but now I can also create letterhead. So if I wanted to, I could add letterhead. I'm going to use organization's name and address, but you can actually create a graphical letterhead, and that's something that parishes wanted to do for quite a while. Just like you had before, you've got the body of statement, so you can actually put in that information. Type in your letter, and you can have multiple letters. We have our printed name, so if father doesn't want to, if you want to have a more professional looking form or letter, you can actually have the printed name underneath the signature. You can choose to do a report type for details. So that's going to give you your date, your fund, your envelope, your check number, and the dollar amount. We have the details for 250 or above. And we have our funds total, which is similar to our summary. That's similar to the summary only report. Okay? Then we have family work groups, just like we did before. Now you might say, why would you use family work groups? When I was traveling, one of the great reasons I heard for using family work groups in this area was, if your parish doesn't print letters, but they only print them for people who ask. Okay, so one parish I was working with had a list, an Excel list of people who each year wanted their letters, wanted their tax statement letters. Okay, well, you can actually create a family work group for yourself, listing those families, and then here you can choose that you want that family work group called contribution statements. Okay, and then it's only going to print contribution statements for the people, the families in that group, which is kind of easier than kind of keeping it in a Excel document and or having to find everyone as you go along. Okay. So over here on back to the left-hand side, we have something that we changed was before you would run it for all families, and now you have the ability to run it for only selected families. So before, the report would generate, and give you the list of everyone. And then you would have the opportunity to select the check boxes for the ones that you wanted, and then say print statements. So now you can do only selected families and choose just a few selected families. So if I click on a name, it takes me to my names, and I only have 130 people in here, so I'm just going to click on search. So that's going to bring up my list, and here I can view 25 items, 50 items, or 75 items. And when I do that, I've expanded my screen so it's easier to see. So let's see, if we go here, click here, and then scroll down, choose another person. So I can select the check boxes next to the people that I want to involve or print statements for, and then click select. And that's going to go ahead and give me the people that I want to print statements for. So when I generate the report, I'm only going to be generating the report for the people that I selected. And I'm going to go back up. Okay. Then you can put a minimum and maximum amount, just like you could before. So some parishes say if you donated over $250 this year, we'll send you a statement, otherwise you need to request a statement. You have your start date and your end date, and I'm going to change this to 2016 because normally I'm training and I put some data in here when I'm training, and I don't have any data in there for this year right now. We can print statement labels. So I'm going to click statement labels and then scroll right down. Made it a little too big. Get over to the right. Okay. Trying to get my little sidebar here. It's way over here. There we go. Then you can choose the different types of funds that you want. I'm going to choose all funds. This is going to pull my tax deductible funds. Anything that was marked as tax deductible. And in the system, the new system, you can choose whether a specific donation itself is tax deductible or not. So you can choose, before you had the fund, and the fund was tax deductible, and there was nothing you could do. The fund was completely tax deductible and it would always show up on reports. Now you have the ability to choose the fund being tax deductible, but when you're actually entering an individual contribution, you can go ahead and choose that single contribution as tax deductible. And then I'm going to choose my family groups. I'm going to choose all of my family groups, but one thing that we've updated is that before you could only choose one family group or all family groups. So if you wanted to print a letter to your inactive parishioners and your moved parishioners at the same time, you couldn't. You'd have to print a list of your inactive members and then a list of your moved members. Here you'll be able to choose multiple checkboxes or deselect multiple checkboxes. So that allows you to print different letters. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but you might, if you're not printing different letters, you might want to print different letters because the message that you send to your active parishioners, your contributors, could be different than what you'd want to send to your visitors or people who were contributor onlys. Maybe for your visitors and contributor onlys, you might want to send them a letter, thanking them, of course, for their donation, but then letting them know of some upcoming events. So if your parish has anything that's coming up, and it may even be just save the date for Easter Masses, and here's the times we're going to be having Easter Masses because it's going to be different, so that your families know. Just something to get them back into your parish would be a good idea. I'm going to click on the little export icon, and that's going to export my information. And one second. Okay, here we go. So it should put it at the bottom of my screen. Export. And I didn't choose. I'm going to choose PDF. You can choose Excel if you want, but I choose PDF because it puts it in a pretty format. Got my contribution, here's my labels. So I've only got 3 families that year that gave. And then I have my statement. So here's my statement with my parish in the upper left, my parish parishioners' names here, got their envelope number listed here, and it gives me my contribution statement period, and then gives me my information down below. Okay, so that's what your contribution letters would look like. Now I can change that a little bit. So if I click on my little settings card, I can go to my contents. And on my contents, I can choose the mailing name. Do I want the mailing name to be formal or informal mailing name, or formal or informal salutation? I can also choose a disclaimer. So because you can choose whether things are tax deductible or not, you can choose to have a disclaimer or not. So by default, the disclaimer is omitted, but you could add one or the other disclaimers that we have here. To change your letterhead, you would click on the little plus, and then you would type in a name, and then you would click on change. That's going to take you right into your letterhead. And then you have your signature. So a father doesn't want to sign all of the letters, but we want to look like it came, like he signed them all. We can actually import a signature, and that way you can put his signature in there and then his name right below it. And that way you don't have to go ahead and, he doesn't have to sign everything. Below that we have our body of statement. So you can put in our body of statement, change that. And then below that, we have our printed name. So to add anything, you just click on the plus, and then you name it, and then you can add that information. Now you also have column selection and ordering. So I can get more data on a page if I remove the check number. So I can just have the contribution date, the contribution amount, and the fund name, and that's going to give me 2 columns for my report. Under this icon over here, we also have our filters. So under filters, you've got your contribution types, which you may have different contribution types, and you have your other filters. So one of the things that we did in this updated module is you can include families with blank street addresses and include families with blank or invalid zip codes. Now, most of the time you don't want to include those, so those are marked as not being used right now. So by default, they're not checked. So if I were to print my report, anyone who had a blank street address or an invalid zip code would not appear in my report. And that's great because I don't want to accidentally print them so that they get mailed and then get returned to me. I can also include families with send mail unchecked. So this one is checked by default because we're assuming that even if a family says they don't want to receive mail, if you're sending contribution letters, that they should get their contribution letter. Okay? But if your policy is, if you say no mail, we're not going to send you any mail whatsoever, then you would uncheck that. You can also include $0 contribution line items, which you could be 4. And that's so that way if someone donates $0, you could go ahead and put in the $0 donation. Some parishes use that to keep track of attendance. And then here you can include non-tax deductible items. So by default, include non-tax deductible contributions is not selected. Okay? So include non-tax deductible. So if you wanted to run a report that included your non-tax deductible items, you would need to come here and select that. So those are just some filters that you have that you can run. Any questions about offering before I move on to one of the other modules? Okay, we'll start up here.
Question offering is on the posting. When we post the collection, the latest offering module that you updated has a little issue on it is closed. You have to close it in order to produce reports.
Correct.
And if there was some error in posting, then it takes a lot of roundabout to correct.
Oh, no, it doesn't.
Whereas your previous version had very simple. It had 3 options. One is committed, another one is open, and then another one is closed.
Correct.
So in case if there were some mistakes and you didn't close it, we could very easily edit. And that is the major drawback of the latest update that you have done. And I have given several times to your support staff that this is going to create a lot of problem for, especially in rural parishes where we don't have computer geeks working in our office. And most of the time it's some of the ladies that retire volunteer to do, it is creating a lot of confusion. So if that can be corrected, it would be appreciated.
Okay.
Still, I say I am from 2009 following you guys. I still would like the desktop version much better. And you guys took away the license. That was not easy.
Yeah, unfortunately, we couldn't continue to update that.
The desktop version license, I would switch back.
No, we're not going to do that. We don't update that. We don't support that anymore. So the question was, in the new posting, we have to close batches before they show up on reports. And that is true to a certain extent. Okay? Whenever you're in a posting, your batch, see these are all closed, so I could click export. It doesn't matter. I'll have an export button on any batch, and then I can choose to export it to Excel. So your staff can actually print the reports to view them before they actually put them in review and before they close them. Okay? Review are similar to committed, But when you committed a batch in the previous program, it actually posted it to the parishioners' accounts. Okay, here you have to close it to submit it to the parishioners' accounts. But you can still get a list of everything that was contributed prior to closing that batch, so that they can double check their transactions before they actually put the batch in review. Or they can put the batch in review. Most parishes, what their process is, they put the batch in review, and then they take the deposit to the bank. Okay? The bank says that the deposit was $1,000, and that's what your batch said. So at that point, you could either put if it's in review, you could close it, or you could leave it in review. Then you could wait and you check it with the bank statement and make sure that all of your contributions went through, so there weren't any bounced checks. Okay, if there weren't any bounced checks, then you would want to create actually a correction batch for that. So there's really no reason to leave your batch open. Once you take it to the bank and get the deposit slip, as long as your deposits match, you should be able to close your batch or put your batch in review and then close your batch. Okay? If for some reason you have someone who returns, their check bounced, then you would want to create another contribution for that family as a negative contribution to show that insufficient fund. So you could show that they gave you $50, but the bank returned $50, so that you have that checks and balance. Okay? Now, if for some reason you create a batch and the date's off in all of them, okay? The new process to create a correction batch is so much easier than it was before. Before, if you had a mistake, you had to input 2 entries for each contribution. You had to input an entry for the wrong contribution, which would have been a negative dollar amount, and then you would have to input a positive contribution for that same family with a positive dollar amount. Okay, so for each contribution, you would have to add 2 contributions. Here in the updated system, when I go under my contributions, and my contributions are only going to show up in this area once they're closed. Okay, I can find my contributions, and let's see, I got to change my date range here. Change my date range and then search. Okay, so here I could find my batch. So this right here tells me that it's not in a batch. But if they were in a batch, I could find my batches. But anyway, I can click on one or more contributions. Okay, so let's say these were the contributions I entered incorrectly. If I entered them as a batch name and I needed to change everything in that batch, I would simply just put in the batch name over here under the batch name. So on the right-hand side, there's a filter for batch name, and that would bring up my entire batch. And then from there, I could select every contribution, or I could select just a few contributions. I'm going to continue with just the few that I've chosen here. And then I'm going to click on the little double check mark, which is my correction. So I'm going to click on that. And that tells me that I'm going to create 3 corrections for this batch. So I'm going to tell it that I want to edit the date. I can edit more than one thing, one or more value on the right-hand side. I'm going to tell it that I want to edit the date, and I want to enter the date as of today. And I need to call my correction batch something, so I'm going to call this. Usually when I am creating a correction batch for real, I would title it the same name as the original correction batch. Okay? That way, if I'm sorting by name, I can see the original correction batch name, and then, or the original batch, and then the correction batch, and I would put a date after, or put the word correction after it. So I'm just going to call this 2021. It's kind of hard to see over here in the dark. 2021. They'll just call it 2021, and I'll do correction. So I just put correction after it. If it's a insufficient fund, then I would put NSF after it, if that's why I was creating that batch. And then I have to put a reason, so updated date. Then I click my little save. So I say yes. Want to create that batch. So my correction batch has now been created. So I didn't have to type in the families, because before you would have had to type in every family or every envelope number. You would have had to put in every fund. You would have had to put in every amount. Here the system does it all for you. So now when I go to my posting screen, it automatically created a negative contribution. Let me scroll down here. It created a negative contribution and a positive contribution. Had the original date, so the original date was 1/17/16, and the new date that I changed it to was 10/12/2021. So if a mistake is made, it is so much easier, especially if there's numerous mistakes, to correct that batch to make sure that it appears on the parishioner statements correctly. So it is a little bit of a change, but I think this is one of the best things that we've done in a long, long time, to be honest with you, because I've helped people painstakingly create correction batches for, especially in January, because they posted January, didn't check the date, so they posted their December contributions, some of them in January. It's so much easier to correct. But that's from my perspective. You're entitled to your perspective. We had another question over here.
I wonder why I can't see what's on the left-hand side of the screen. So my thing only has 3 options over here. Home, and 2 more. So I don't understand how you get into this.
So yours,
Clicked on something over here, over. Can't see it.
oh, gotcha. I don't know why it's not showing my whole screen.
Yearly reports, I think you said.
Yeah, reports, I've got reports over here, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm not sure why it's not, but you can also go, I could go to home and then offering, and then I could go to my donor reports from here also.
Okay, so I did that yesterday.
Okay.
I want to do quarterly reports. They should be out by now. But I can't do them because when I get the report, I get 417 pages. I only have less than 200 families.
Okay.
The first person is 17 pages long,
Oh, goodness.
and each thing entered is here 13 times.
So I'm not exactly sure why.
And they were perfect in July,
Okay,
and now they're not.
I don't doubt that. I'm not sure why. Did you contact support? Did you contact support?
I did not, because I was coming here
Because you're coming here, so maybe,
cheaper than
maybe,
on the phone, 500.
maybe when I'm sitting in the back of the room, I can give you some time and we can try and figure that out for you, okay? I'm not sure why it's doing that, but I'd be happy to try and see if there's anything that I can do to make it better. You're welcome. So his reports aren't printing out the way he thinks they should, so we'll take a look at that later and see what I can do for him. Any other questions about the updated offering module? Okay. So I wanted to take a little bit of time to go over our, one of the things that we've done for Family Suite. So if I go into My Family, and if your parishioners now register online, if you're using Family Suite to register for religious education, it's going to time out because I haven't been in it for a little bit, so it's going to, there we go. Under religious education for their family, when they register for a class, they can actually pay for that class now. I wanted home and my own church.
That's if you have the online giving option?
Or if you have another online giving program that provides you with a URL.
Okay.
So it's going to take them to a form. So you put, I'm going to show you, you can put a URL in here, and it's going to take you to the form. So if I go to online registration, and I choose my term, and my student. I'm doing this kind of fast, just to kind of show you what it's going to look like. Okay, so once I submit my registration, then I can click on Pay Now. Okay, so Pay Now is going to take me to an online form. And this is the form that we created in our giving program. But they could then fill out the rest of the form, and they could actually pay. Okay? Now to get there, all you would have to simply do at your parish is under the religious education module. So I'm going to go back to Family Suite and religious education, and then under my configure, manage payments. So I simply, or you simply just have to put in that link, because it's just going to direct them to a link. So it doesn't matter if it's our online giving program or another online giving program. If it's a link that you can send them to, like on your website or what have you, you can put that same link in here.
Okay.
Okay? You're welcome. Let's see. So under Family Directory, something that's been updated was under Member List, you now have the ability, come on, to add life events. So life events, so if I click on life events, that's going to give me the ability to add different life events. So you at your parish can create different life events. And I'm sorry it's not showing up. I'm not sure how to make my screen fit that. But you could create different life events. So one of the things that people wanted to keep track of was like background checks and appointments, could be certifications, things like that. So right now within the program, you can actually keep track of that. I know some parishes who are using it keep track of service hours for their kids. So they've got a confirmation class, and they have to do so many service hours. So they're using the service hours program or event in here to keep track of all of the service hours that are given by a student. So that way they know how many more they've got to do and how many more they've already done. So that's something that's a little different that we've added. And you can actually run a report on that. So you can run that report from your Family Directory under your reports. And in reports, you can run your your life events reports. So you can run them for many different configurations for that life events report. So that's something that we've updated on Family Suite under Family Directory. Any questions on that? Yes?
Will the program actually remind you of when the event is coming up?
No, it does not do that. But we do have another program that's included that is not Facility Calendar, it's Safe Environment Program. And so you can do reminders and reports on Safe Environment Program that would give you that information.
I do have a question.
Okay?
I find it frustrating when I'm trying to send an email to all of our parishioners, and I guess I figured out instead of I need to go under members, because like the husband and wife have different emails, and I have the main email under the husband's name, and it's usually the women that check their emails. And then the moms will say, well, I didn't get that email. So then I guess I just go under member list, so it picks up all of the emails
Right.
that are entered. Is there any other way to do that?
Are you doing this for religious education, or are you doing this for, okay. So under religious education, so the question was, she's sending out emails to many different families. She wants to make sure that the people who are going to open the email actually get the email, and that's not always the person who is listed as the family person, the address under the family name. So she wants to run parents. So if you're in religious education, and do you do them from religious education?
Pardon me?
Do you send them out from your religious education module?
I do not.
Okay. So do you have a religious education module?
I do not.
Oh, okay.
I have it under
Family list? Okay. So yeah, so then in that case, you would want to send, you'd want to create a member work group. If that's what you're going to do, you'd have to, there's no other way to do it, is create a member work group. Okay. Any other questions? If you had our religious education though, when you create your classes and stuff like that, you can actually tell it. So if I go to my classes and choose my term.
I have a question.
Yep.
You were touching that point that you said about integrated census and accounting. How does that function? Suppose,
The integration with Parasoft accounting and Parasoft census.
suppose we have posted our collection on the basis of various funds, like adult envelope rate collection, we automatically transfer it to the accounting system.
Once the batch is closed, as long as you have the integration set up, then yes, it will go ahead and transfer it to the accounting system as a deposit. And it's going to send it as a deposit based on the revenue account that you put in for each fund.
Is there a section that you will be explaining that later?
That's not a section that I'm going to be explaining. I'm not sure if Nancy or Bob would be explaining that in one of their presentations. But again, I'd be happy to show you later. Okay? I don't have the accounting integration turned on in this program, so it doesn't. So it's not something that I could easily go, oh yeah, here you go, this is what does it. But basically under administration, under manage staff, and go ahead and click on a person. So under the person, if you have the accounting integration, the center box where it says ministry scheduler is going to be the accounting integration. Okay? And then when you're an offering, this part would need to be set up, and then when you're an offering, it would go ahead and there would be, let's see, go back to here. Close that. Yeah, I'm trying to get to the offering module. Gotta scroll back up to the top here. Yeah, it's really hard to see back here. Doesn't want to go any smaller for me. Oh, here we go. Here, back to offering. So under offering, and then under your fund, which I don't have the integration set up, but under the fund, there's going to be a area for them to, for you to put in the funds. Go to funds, here we go, all funds. So in this area, there's going to be a revenue account field. So you'd want the revenue account field to be set up, and then when you get under settings, you would want to tell it that you want the, go back to home, offering, and where's my home, settings. And under settings, you would want to tell it that you want it to require a deposit. So there's a couple different steps, but once you close that batch, as long as everything's set up right, and our support team can help you with that, make sure that it's all set up right, it will then create that deposit entry in Parasoft Accounting, and it's going to create it based on the revenue account. It's going to put it to each revenue account that as you want it. Okay? All right. My time is up. Thank you, everyone.